It started like any other evening. Chike sat alone in his dimly lit apartment. Feet propped on the table, the hum of his standing fan, the only sound besides the low volume of his TV. He was scrolling mindlessly through his phone, half watching an old political debate, until a video popped up in his feed. "You will never go to church again after watching this," he scoffed. Clickbait. But something about the thumbnail, a blurred figure surrounded by candles, made his thumb hesitate. Out of habit, or maybe instinct, he tapped play. The screen flickered. A grainy video opened with a hidden camera panning across a massive congregation. Voices chanted in unison, not in prayer, but in something that sounded ancient, primal. The camera zoomed in on the pulpit. A man stood there, charismatic, eyes burning like he saw through souls, whispering into the mic. The crowd responded in eerie synchrony. Their eyes rolled back. Some collapsed. Chike leaned forward. The footage cut to another scene. A woman, tied to a chair in a dark room, muttering scripture backward. The words chill the air. "This is Redeemer's Light Ministries." A distorted voice narrated. "And what you're about to see is just the beginning." He didn't realize his hand was shaking until he tried to grab his glass of water. It clinked against the table. By the end of the 8-minute clip, Chike sat frozen. He wasn't sure if what he'd seen was real, but one thing was clear. This wasn't ordinary corruption or televangelist drama. This was something else. Something deeper, darker. He replayed the video twice. Then again. Each time, his journalist instinct screamed louder. Find the truth. Expose it. And just like that, Chike was no longer a passive observer. He was the story's next chapter. 3 years ago, Chike stood helplessly beside his wife's hospital bed, watching her slip away while clutching a Bible instead of an oxygen mask. Her breathing had been shallow, her skin cold, but their pastor insisted, "It's not pneumonia. It's a test of faith. She will be healed by prayer alone." Chike had wanted to call an ambulance. He almost did, but she had believed so strongly. So he sat by her side, praying with trembling hands as the hours passed and her body grew still. After the funeral, the pastor never came around again. No explanation, no apology, just a quiet disappearance, like a ghost who'd done his damage. Something inside Chike broke that day, not just grief, but a violent fracture in his belief system. He walked away from the church, burned every devotional they owned, and never again bowed his head in prayer. Instead, he turned his pain into fuel. Journalism became his altar, truth his only gospel. He exposed corrupt politicians, fraudulent businesses, even shady police syndicates. But deep down, his greatest fury remained caged, waiting for a chance to strike at the very institution that betrayed him. So when that video appeared, it didn't just trigger curiosity, it awakened vengeance. It came through a block number, just a simple message. If you want the truth, come to Redeemer's Light Ministries this Sunday. 9 a.m., don't bring cameras. Only an open heart. Chike stared at the text for a long minute. No signature, no emoji, no follow-up, just silence. Redeemer's Light Ministries. The same name whispered in the viral video, the same church where people supposedly vanished and rituals blurred the line between religion and something else. He'd done a quick background check already. Their social media was pristine. The pastor, Prophet Ezekiel, had a glowing online presence, full of miracle crusades and cheerful testimonials. Not a single crack in the glass. Until now, Chike's instincts prickled. This wasn't a random invite. Someone knew he'd watched the video. Someone wanted him inside. He deleted the message and reached for his worn-out notepad. Undercover would be, then, a new convert. Curious, wounded, desperate for salvation. Easy mask to wear. He'd seen plenty like that. He packed light. No recorder. No wire. Just a pocket Bible for show and a tiny audio chip tucked in his collar, just in case. That last line echoed in his mind as he locked his apartment. Don't bring cameras. Only an open heart. It felt less like a request and more like a warning. As he headed into the unknown, part of him wondered if he was chasing a story or walking into something that didn't want to be found. The church building was massive, like a stadium wrapped in marble and gold. Chike joined the line of early worshippers, most of them dressed in dazzling whites, eyes filled with expectation. From the moment he stepped inside, the air changed, thick with incense, sweat, and something he couldn't name, something electric. A choir dressed in deep crimson robes sang harmonies, so precise they didn't sound human. The crowd swayed as one, hands lifted, eyes shut. It wasn't just worship, it was choreography. Everyone moved the same way, like they were wired together. Chike kept his movements subtle, mimicking enough to blend in, but his eyes missed nothing. Then came the testimonies. A man claimed he'd been cured of terminal cancer overnight. A woman said she'd seen her dead child in a dream and woke up to find the child alive in her living room. The audience screamed in praise. Chike nodded along, but his pulse thudded. Too perfect, too clean. There was no room for doubt in this room, only awe. Then the lights dimmed and a hush fell. A spotlight lit the stage. Prophet Ezekiel emerged, tall, immaculate, smiling with a calm that chilled Chike's spine. He spoke gently, almost seductively, drawing the crowd in with each syllable. His words weren't loud, but they echoed as if the walls themselves listened. People cried, collapsed, shouted in tongues. One man near Chike foamed at the mouth and was gently dragged away by ushers. Chike stood still, heart hammering. This wasn't a sermon, it was theater, and everyone around him was an actor who didn't know they were acting. He caught Prophet Ezekiel's gaze for a second, and in that moment, he swore the man smiled directly at him. The service ended with a final roar of hallelujahs, the kind that shook the chandeliers. Worshippers poured out, still high on whatever they'd just experienced. Chike didn't leave. He lingered near the altar, pretending to pray while his eyes scanned every exit, every usher, every camera. Then he saw it, a narrow hallway tucked behind a massive altar, half covered by a velvet curtain. No sign, no light, just shadows. He slipped through when no one was looking, careful not to make a sound. The hallway smelled damp, earthy, like a place not meant to be found. At the end, a steel door stood sealed shut, cold and gray, etched with strange, swirling symbols that looked both ancient and deliberate, not decorative, protective. He reached for the handle, locked, of course. But before he could examine it further, voices echoed from a side corridor. He ducked into a corner behind a draped column. The offering of silence must be prepared before initiation night. One voice said, "Has the girl been chosen?" Another asked. A pause. She doesn't know yet, but the prophet will reveal it in time. Chike's skin prickled. Their voices were calm, methodical, like planning a dinner party. Then footsteps, soft, getting louder. He turned his head and froze. A figure in a bone-white robe was gliding toward him. Not walking, gliding, face hidden in a hood. No sound, no expression. Chike didn't wait. He bolted down the hallway, heart pounding, breath ragged, the symbols on the door burning into his memory. Something was terribly wrong here, and someone had just seen his face. She found him, not the other way around. Chike was sitting in a rundown cafe across from the church compound, pretending to sip tea while reviewing his scribbled notes, when a woman in a plain scarf and oversized sunglasses slid into the seat across from him without a word. "I saw you slip behind the altar," she said softly without looking at him. Chike tensed. "You following me?" "No. Watching. Big difference." She finally met his gaze. Her eyes were sharp, tired, like someone who hadn't slept properly in months. "Name's Amara. I used to work for them, until I saw too much." He leaned in. "What did you see?" She hesitated, glanced over her shoulder. "A night vigil that wasn't a vigil. We were told to pray. Instead, they brought in a new member, made him kneel, then the lights cut out. When they came back on, he was gone. No one ever asked questions." Chike's breath caught. "You got proof. I've got keys, and I know where they keep the things they don't want the public to see." She paused. "But I need your word. Everyone I've helped has vanished. You run, I disappear too." Chike looked her dead in the eye. "I don't run." The door creaked open with a soft groan that sounded much too loud in the dead silence of the corridor. Chike stepped in first, flashlight trembling in his grip. Amara followed, clutching a rusted keychain that had opened 3 different doors already. This one was labeled Archives, but what lay inside felt more like a vault. Stacks of locked filing cabinets lined the walls, but the real prize was a safe in the corner, already opened, as if someone hadn't bothered to close it. Inside were folders marked with one chilling word: offerings. Chike opened one at random. A photograph clipped to the top. Smiling man, mid-30s. Beneath it, status, relocated to Site 7. Cleared. Initiation level complete. He flipped through more. Faces. Names. Checkboxes labeled silent or awake. Some were stamped loss. Then came the ledger. Handwritten lists of donations. Massive sums, billions in naira, rerouted through obscure charities into offshore accounts in Malta, the Cayman Islands, places designed to disappear money. It was all there, paper trails the size of rivers. Amara gasped and dropped a folder. Chike picked it up and froze. It was her, his wife's photo, tied to a profile he had never seen. Her file didn't say deceased. It said ascended, held for reclamation. His pulse roared in his ears. She was here, he whispered. She didn't die. Before he could speak another word, the overhead lights flickered on. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Time's up, Amara hissed. They ran. Amara waited until they were hidden in a cramped hotel room on the outskirts of town before she pulled the flash drive from inside her bra. I wasn't supposed to take this, she said, hands trembling. But I needed proof. Chike plugged it into his laptop, heart pounding. The screen flickered, then opened to raw security footage. Grainy, uncut, time-stamped. The first clip showed a group of blindfolded members, lined up in rows, chanting words that sounded like no language Chike had ever heard. Their voices rose in a slow, rhythmic swell that sent chills down his spine. The next file was worse. Pastors, men he'd seen on stage, grinning and proclaiming healing, now dressed in black robes, circling a shallow pit. One of them held a bowl, another a blade. The chanting was different here, deeper, darker. Then came the last clip. A tunnel, somewhere under the church, faintly lit with torches. A procession moved through it, hooded figures escorting a limp, barely conscious woman. Her face turned briefly toward the camera. Amara gasped. That's the missing usher from last month. Chike didn't speak. He had already pulled out his phone and started recording the footage straight from the screen. This was more than a story now. It was evidence and a warning. They didn't make it far. Just as Chike and Amara slipped past the hotel's back exit, black SUVs pulled up like shadows on wheels. Men in dark suits emerged, silent and synchronized. Before Chike could run, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. Don't struggle, a voice murmured. Then Prophet Ezekiel stepped out from the lead vehicle, looking as composed as he did on the altar. He walked toward them slowly, like he had all the time in the world. No anger, no raised voice, just certainty. You've seen too much, he said, eyes locked on Chike. But not enough. Chike clenched his fist, but Amara's hand found his, trembling. Ezekiel leaned in, his voice like silk over a blade. You're already one of us, Chike. You just don't know it yet. Then he smiled, and it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a promise, a dark one. Chike's eyes snapped open. Flickering candlelight painted shifting shadows on the stone walls around him. He was lying on cold, damp ground, surrounded by others, men and women, all in a trance, their eyes glazed, lips moving in silent chants. A sweet, smoky scent clung to the air, thick enough to choke on. Something had been burned, or someone. Then he saw her, Amara. She stood near the center of the chamber, robed and barefoot, swaying gently with the rhythm of the low, throbbing drumbeat echoing through the underground space. Her mouth moved, chanting, words foreign, harsh. Not like the Amara he knew. Her eyes didn't find him. Chike tried to rise, but his limbs felt heavy, as if soaked in lead. His heart slammed against his ribs. This wasn't a dream. Then Prophet Ezekiel stepped into the circle, robes flowing, arms raised. Welcome, he said, voice ringing with eerie calm. This is the final awakening. Only one may walk away. The candles flared. The crowd began to chant louder. Chike's gaze darted upward and froze. A camera, mounted in the corner of the chamber. Its red light blinked steadily, watching, recording. Chike stared at it, his breath caught. This wasn't just a ritual. It was a show, and he was the lead actor. His phone, gone. His name, already etched into whatever came next. Somewhere beyond that blinking light, the world would watch. And if he survived, they'd never go to church again. To be continued. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, so you'll be the first to know when part 2 drops. You won't want to miss what happens next.